We got to get an updated one of those so on Friday mornings we can say, here are your hosts. And we could mention Todd Eccles as well from Patriot Defense because Todd joins us to talk firearms on Friday mornings. And first of all, welcome back.
Oh, it's good to be here. It's a good weekend for a class. I got a class on Saturday. It's a great weekend. It's going to rain a little bit, so no one wants to be out doing yard work. So come sign up for a class.
Do you have any slots left for tomorrow?
I do have a handful of slots. I can still take some people. I've got a lot more slots open for the 22nd. The
Right.
class on the 22nd is. I've got a handful of people signed up, so plenty of spots there. And then I do have a few slots for tomorrow.
And for people who are looking to get in touch with you, they can do that any number of ways.
Yeah. They can call me on my cell phone. They can text me. That'll be area code 620-794-6223. I'll repeat that. Area code 620-794-6223. You can find me on Facebook under Patriot Defense. Leave me a message there. Like the page. Comment on it. Get a hold of me. I'll respond. I mean, I got two phones right here in front of me right now. So
We wanted to point out you're still doing videos too for people who'd like to it's in essence another show, but it's really it grew out of this, and it's now for people who have may not have the time every Friday morning to have the radio up against their ear. They can actually find you online.
I do podcasts now. So I don't know if I'm a podcast star quite yet, but I'm trying. My numbers keep going up.
Hickok is shaking in his boots.
Yeah. I'm sure he is. No, you can find me on YouTube. So I put the podcast on YouTube. It's not a video; it's like a video audio thing. I'm under Patriot Defense Podcast. I'm on SoundCloud. I'm on iTunes under the same Patriot Defense Podcast. And as I do these episodes, I try to do one a week. I go ahead and I put them on my Facebook page as well. And I need to probably update my website. I find that there's always something I forget to do, and the website unfortunately gets neglected.
Well, we've got to point out for people who are tuning in that we talk not just about training, but we talk a lot about just news and firearms. And we just briefly touched on it last week that there had been a shooting in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, which is a suburb of Tulsa, where three burglars broke into the house and they had brass knuckles, which I didn't know anybody still carried, brass knuckles and knives. And with a warning, he gunned all three of them down. Not that he probably had to offer a warning when he saw what they smashed the glass and they come in waving knives, but he gunned all three down and killed them all. Number one, he kept his cool. Number two, he's a good shot.
Hmm.
Um, and now you've got the grandfather of one of the dead saying, oh, he didn't have to respond with such violent force because they didn't have guns themselves, as if he was going to go over and wrestle these guys, three of them. And he said, and now the dead will grow up and their loved ones won't have them to cherish. I didn't feel any sympathy.
No,
I have to say that.
there was I think this was a year or so, a couple years ago, but there was this kid that would he got shot by someone. I think he was breaking into a house or a car or something. He got shot and killed by someone defending themselves. And I remember that the mom came on and said, "But he was a good boy. He was a good-hearted boy. He just had a little problem with breaking into people's houses." I mean, that doesn't make any
Right,
sense. You know,
right.
you do the crime, you're gonna do the time, whatever that may be. Whether that's you're sitting in jail or someone that uses self defense and you end up dying. It's a risk you take.
I remember watching an old Daffy Duck cartoon when I was a kid, and he's testifying against this villain called the Shropshire Slasher. And during the course of the trial, they bring in the slasher's mother to testify, and it's a little old lady, and she says, "My Shropshire was always a good little boy."
They always everyone was at first.
People love their kids. I mean,
They
obviously,
do.
but your kids, if they cross a certain line, sometimes there's going to be payment for that.
There is, and I mean hopefully everyone is armed. Everyone knows their Second Amendment rights. The people that do carry firearms to protect themselves are ready because this is a real threat. This does happen, and I unfortunately I know the exact story that you're talking about. I hang my head in shame because I've been busy with everything this week, and I've actually been unable to actually open up the link and actually read the story in depth, great depth. But someone comes into my house with brass knuckles, with knives, chances are I'm going to see that as a threat, and I'm going to do what I need to do. And if that means I'm going to shoot him and put him down, it is what it is. I get out of there alive. My family gets out of there alive. Don't come into my house and do that.
I know a little bit about that Broken Arrow suburb, and it's a lot of smaller, older ranch style homes that would have went up in the 1960s and 70s. Is an AR probably appropriate in that type of neighborhood, or
You know, and
you grab whatever I guess you have?
yeah, you're gonna grab whatever you have, but if you're good with your AR and you got an AR that's set up, ARs are good. They're good house guns. A lot of people say grab a shotgun. An AR is a fantastic house gun as well, especially if you got a shorter barrel. They're really easy if you know how to manipulate it. You know how to go around corners. Fantastic. I mean, they will do the job. You can buy, it depends on the ammo you have too. If you got these full metal jackets and stuff, and maybe let's say you miss and it zips through a wall, that may not be the best idea. If you have some hollow points that expand on contact, which is what you should carry, handgun, rifle, whatever you can use for self defense, is a good hollow point, one that's going to go in and do a lot of damage and not leave the target. And if you got that, that worked out just fine.
You also mentioned last week about you never know. You could be in the most peaceful little town where someone, if you're walking out of the grocery store and the bank's next door and a bank robber just hit the bank and he came out and his getaway driver's gone and he sees you with your keys and your bags of groceries, you could be in a downtown Buell or Filer and all of a sudden you become a target.
Yeah, I mean, it can happen anywhere. Anywhere. It doesn't matter where you are. I mean, I relayed a story, I don't know, 3 weeks ago about when I actually had to use my firearm. I was in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, and I had my I think 5-year-old daughter at the time. We were out fishing, okay? We were just out in the sticks fishing, and then my situation happened. Those people confronted me. I wasn't expecting that day. It was a Saturday morning. I was fishing with my daughter. I'm glad I had my handgun. I could have left it at home. I also relate another story of that gentleman who carried a gun all the time. And he woke up one morning. He had to run his daughter to some church or some activity. He was just going to drop her off. He's going to be gone for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. He looked at his gun and thought, you know what? I'm just gonna leave. I don't feel like carrying it today. I'm just gonna be gone a minute. But it was in such a habit. He's like, forget it. I'll take my stuff with me. So he took it with him, and the next thing you know, someone's getting into his back seat. They opened up the door. They got into the back seat. He was able to use his firearm and convince the gentleman he needed to leave right away. If he didn't have that, what would have happened? Would he have been shot? Would his daughter have been shot? Would he have been carjacked? We don't know. If you got it, it can happen anywhere. Evil can rear its ugly head anywhere you are. You don't know when that's going to be.
You must have been left-handed. That would be easier to turn around and say, "Get out" that way.
Yeah, it just. I mean, He didn't say. It was a story that I heard read. He had written a letter into another podcast that I listened to.
But you also mentioned this last week. This is people trained. You should train with both hands.
You should train with both hands, and you should. What if something happens to your right hand? With you're right-handed, you carry on your right side. What if something happens to your right hand? You need to be able to use that firearm with your left hand as well. It's a little more difficult, but with the right training, with the right practice, you can achieve it. And I tell everyone, some people just they shoot their handgun with two hands. It's called a handgun, not a hands gun. It's called a handgun. So right or left, it doesn't matter. You should be able to run that thing with one hand. You could get injured in a fight. You could be holding your baby carrier. You could be pushed to the ground. One arm's pinned under you. So you just have to grab. You have one arm to grab your firearm. That leads me to make that determining factor that you should carry with a round chambered. A round needs to be chambered so you're able to draw that firearm and you're able to fire that gun without having to have a second hand to try to rack the slide.
We had a couple last week in Virginia. This goes back to you don't know where it's going to happen. They were on a vacation and they were towing an RV and they stopped to get gasoline. And some woman at another pump started cursing at the guy, saying she didn't like rich white people. Apparently, if you own an RV, that somehow makes you part of the 1% now. She ended up coming over and attacking the guy as he was trying to pump his gas. So again, in a situation like that, the closest I've ever come to something like that actually happened to me while pumping gas about 25 years
It's
ago.
because you're not paying attention to what's going on around you.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
They take advantage. I didn't mean to interrupt your story, but they take advantage of that when your situational awareness is down and you're focused on buckling that kid into that car or you're focused on pumping that fuel or whatever, and they can sneak up behind you. That's when they're going to do it. So you weren't expecting that to happen.
Guy came right over to me and started, and apparently, one of these people who was homeless, but he was homeless because he had mental issues
Hmm.
and started in on me. And he wasn't very big, and I was able to just sort of push him back. But it caught me, a little bit, by surprise. And in that situation, if he'd been armed, even if he'd had a knife, pushing him wasn't going to help me.
Right. And another situation that you talked about was a friend of yours had stopped in to use the restroom. Let's say had to use a porta potty,
Right.
and that's one of the most dangerous things to do anyhow is a rest area or a porta potty because there's one way in, one way out. You don't know when you open that door, you don't know what you're going to be facing. And your friend learned that he wasn't expecting that to happen that day. So you, get a firearm, learn how to use it, become proficient with it. I mean, a knife is fine too, but a knife is if you know how to use a knife is fantastic, but it's up close and personal. You got to get a heck of a lot closer to use that. Firearms will help keep distance.
He never, until that day happened, he never carried a firearm. And he managed, as he said, he got away because they pulled in to attack him as he was coming out of the porta potty, but they forgot that he could jump in the passenger side of his car. And he leaped over and got somehow over the console and drove
Uh huh.
away. But after that, he went out and bought himself his first firearm. And from that, then he got training. And from that day on, he was, no matter where he went, that was on his side. And even some of his neighbors followed him and did the same thing.
I hear that story all the time. I listen to a lot of different podcasts, and there's another guy that he's kind of telling about his concealed carry journey. And the reason why says he lives in a really nice neighborhood, and every day he usually walks down to this little store, this little mini mart or whatever that he walks to. And he was out watering his yard one day, and his neighbor, this wasn't local, but his neighbor said, "Hey, come look at this video." And they watched this video of this holdup, and this lady got shot, and there was this armed robbery. And he was watching that video, and he goes, "Hey, pause that for a minute." And he got to look, and he goes, "That's the store that I walk to every day." And so the next thing you know, he decided that he would take matters into his own hands and take his own, protection into his own hands. Just took a class, got a firearm, learned how to use it, and now he's a concealed carrier. That's all it takes. Evil kind of creeps around everywhere. It'll creep into the nice areas, just like it'll creep into the bad areas of town. It just kind of grows, and you need to be prepared for it.
And I, from my days when I was working as a street reporter, I know that many times criminals will target nicer neighborhoods
Sure.
because that's where you get more goodies if you break into a house.
Well, it makes it worthwhile.
Yeah, robbing a poor guy's house doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a whole lot. So they go, it's like fishing. You're looking for the biggest fish.
Yeah, biggest bang for the buck.
Right. We wanted to point out Todd Eccles joining us in studio this morning. We're talking firearms. We're coming up on 20 minutes after 9 o'clock. We'll be available to take some of your telephone calls too as well. I mentioned this in the last hour. If it's a question that we don't know the answer to, my guess is in this audience, somebody knows the answer
Oh
to it.
yeah.
So they can chime in as well. That's following the break. Right now, it's 20 minutes after 9 o'clock. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And we're at 57 on what could be a rainy day, but hey, it's not snowing. Todd Eccles joining us in studio this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 9:22. Bill Colley with you as well. Talking firearms today, and it's 55. Temperature's going in the wrong direction. Well, it'll go in the wrong direction the next few days. All the more reason to be at Todd's class tomorrow, and you'll be nice and warm. And it's not like you're wasting a day gardening. We have a caller straight out of the break. Caller, you're up next. You're on KLIX.
A few years ago, in Salt Lake City, people were doing their Christmas shopping when a gunman went berserk. A gun-packing off-duty policeman shot and killed a gunman. The police officer probably saved people from horrible, painful, crippling wounds or from being killed.
That was Trolley Square, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that was Trolley Square. Yep, and I know that story pretty well. I mean, I'm going to think back now, but I know that story pretty well because it's actually part of one of my other classes that I've done, which is I've done like an active shooter type class. I did that for the Three Creek School District, and that was a good class. But the crazies are out there. But he had his firearm and he was able to stop it. To this day, if you go over to Trolley Square, there's a big sign on the door that says "No firearms allowed." No anything that would have stopped that, right? I mean, but no, he was able to save the day. He did take some lives that day. It's a sad thing. Yeah, you think they would have maybe opened that up, but I look at gun-free zones. This is what I have a nickname for gun-free zones. It's what do I call them? State regulated killing fields. Is pretty much is what they are.
Yeah, they're kill boxes because
Yeah.
the bad guys know There's not going to be many people there, maybe nobody, that can defend themselves.
Exactly, and it's easy pickings. That's why they go to places like schools. That's why they go to places like malls because no one's supposed to have a firearm there. That's why they go to places like theaters where no one's supposed to carry a firearm in certain places. And I like um, I like Idaho law. Okay, Idaho law. We have some good carry laws in this state. One of them, unless it's a county building or a state building or federal building, we all know that we can't carry there no matter what. But Idaho states that if you go into like a private business, a store, whatever, and if there's a sign that says you shouldn't carry there, that's fine. Don't carry there. But if you want to carry past the sign, you can carry past the sign. Keep it concealed. If someone there sees you carrying a firearm and they ask you to leave, you need to leave, okay? Or go outside and get rid of your firearm in your car and then come back in. The only time you can actually get in trouble is if you refuse to leave, and then you're just going to get a trespass charge. So some people choose not to go to those places where they say no firearms. I understand that. Don't patronize them. Don't give them your money because they are taking away your right to self defense. Or in the state of Idaho, you can carry past those signs. Just keep it hidden and know if they ask you to leave, you need to leave. But if you're doing it right, concealed means concealed. They're not going to know you're carrying. Now, once again, I do want to put out there, I'm not saying do this in county buildings, no state buildings, no schools, anything like that. That's a federal thing that you're going to get in big time trouble for that. But you can carry past these signs. You just need to know that if they ask you to leave, you have to leave.
Now, we talked a little bit about what happened in Salt Lake City.
Hmm.
Most people have an image of Salt Lake City as being one of the most peaceful places, and it probably is one of the most peaceful cities in the country, but it's a big city, and big cities do have issues.
They do have issues, and I don't. I've stated this before. I don't like to leave my house. I don't like to leave my little area. I don't like big cities. I like Twins okay, but Twins too big for me. I'd never live here. Okay, Filer was too big for me, and I didn't live in Filer. If I could make do living in Jarbidge, that's where I'd be. We could do our show from a cave over there.
Yeah, no, that would be fun.
But anyhow, whenever I go to Salt Lake, I always have my firearm. They recognize that they're reciprocal with Idaho's permit, so I always carry over there. And what really makes me nervous in Salt Lake is it seems like whenever I'm walking down the street with my family, because there's lots to look at. There's lots of beautiful places to walk down the street and look at houses, buildings, lights, whatever. Is the homeless people? They are so, and maybe just because I'm a small town boy and I don't get out much, they seem to be so aggressive over there. I remember I was out there with my family and this homeless guy kept circling around behind me. He kept following us. He kept circling around behind us. He was always staying behind me, and it just made me nervous. We finally just went back to the car and left. I'm not going to put up with that. I don't want to have to use my firearm. So if I can leave, get into my car and leave and avoid a situation I'm going to, but that made me so nervous.
Avoid the situation, key.
Yes.
You don't go into a neighborhood looking for trouble.
Yeah, just because you have a firearm, just because you have a concealed carry permit, or you're allowed to carry in Idaho now, you shouldn't go somewhere because you have a firearm. You shouldn't feel like you can go somewhere where you normally wouldn't go. Does that make sense?
Right.
Don't go find the meanest, baddest, nastiest street in Twin Falls and visit it at 2 o'clock in the morning just because you have a firearm now. That's not the way you do. You still want to avoid it. In fact, getting your permit should make you more alert and more aware, and you should try to avoid those places even more because you need to be a little more responsible and you want to avoid those situations.
I thought about when you brought that up, the old Death Wish movies where Charles Bronson simply goes out and just,
Trolls for muggers in Central Park.
yeah,
Yeah.
and guns them down at will when he encounters them. In fact, looks for trouble.
Yeah, and you're not law enforcement. Just because you have a firearm, you're not law enforcement. Let law enforcement do their jobs. You're not there to save the day. I've taken classes before, not my class. I've taken some classes. When I got my concealed carry permit, when for the state of Kansas when I lived there was a guy in my class. When can I use my gun? When can I use my gun? Okay, if this and this and this happens, can I use my gun? Or this happened and this happened. Could I have used my gun had I had it? And I looked at that law enforcement officer said, "Oh my gosh, do not give this guy a permit." And he just looked at me and goes, "Well, if he passes the test," I'm like, "Don't give this guy a permit." Some people they almost want to use them. That obviously is the wrong thing to do. You don't want to use your firearm. It's there in case you need to use it.
If you want to use it, they have a range.
Yeah, they have a range. Go bang 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 at the range. That's where you need to do it.
We have more coming up with Todd Eccles in the next half hour of the program. from Patriot Defense. In fact, we'll get some more of his contact details in just a few minutes. It's 56. And 9:30 just around the corner. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. I did tell you last week, I've always been proud of the fact that I was one of those big, beefy guys with a thick neck, but my neck is a lot smaller than it used to be. I lost 4 inches off my neck in about 5 months, and this is because I've been participating in the total body transformation system. It's not a yo yo diet, it's not some crazy fad diet. It is actually a diet backed up by scientific researchers at some of the most prestigious, I'll get that out, universities in all of America, including Cornell, Tufts, and Columbia. And I wanted to point out as well, you'll burn 6 times more fat and lose 8 times more weight than normal results from diet and exercise alone. The meal replacement plan, often healthier than the meals you're replacing, and the cost is about the same as those meals too as well. You still get a healthy amount of calories every day. The average participant, now this is the part that I think stuns a lot of people, and really it's you got to keep this in mind. Average participant, some lose more, 22 pounds and 4 inches off his or her waist in just 60 days. If you'd like to know more about the Total Body Transformation System, contact Marketing Representative Don Chandler here in Twin Falls at 208 731 3560. That's 731 3560. Todd Eccles in studio with us from Patriot Defense this morning. It's coming up on 9:34. Bill Colley with you as well. On Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And Todd does have a course tomorrow and two this month. Actually, one coming up 2 weeks from tomorrow. For people, again, who'd like to know more or get details, what do they do?
They can call me. They can text me. Area code 620-794-6223. They can find me on Facebook under Patriot Defense. Like the page, shoot me a message.
Huh.
Go figure. Excuse the pun. No pun intended. Get me a message. I will just ask about it. If they have questions, they can ask about it. I can get them on the list. We can do it all through text message. And that number, once again, is area code 620-794-6223.
We wanted to point out we weren't quite finished talking about what you need to do in certain situations where you can use firearms and the like.
Right. And, we kind of ended before the break. We talked about there, I've had that guy in class, when can I use my firearm? I want to use my firearm type of thing. And, I always get up in my classes typically and I'll give a deal of this is why I carry. Why I carry a firearm. I carry a firearm to protect my family. Okay. I've made that. I'm not going to be a hero. I don't want to save the day. And unfortunately, all you good people out there listening, I'm not here to be a hero for you guys. I'm here to be a hero to me and for me and my family, my loved ones, whoever might be with me. If I'm in that theater and somebody comes in guns ablazing, starts shooting people, am I going to run him down and try to save the day? Probably not. I'm going to take my family. We're going to try to find a way out. Or if we can't find a way out, we're going to hunker down. I'm going to draw my firearm. And if the fight comes to me, he comes down the aisle and he aims, intends to harm me or my family, then that's when I'm gonna get into the fight. If it comes to me, if my thoughts are if I chase this guy down and I try to shoot him and I get killed or shot in the process, then who's going to protect my family? That's why I carry. They're why I do everything. If I'm in a gas station and I can get out the back door, great. If I'm in a mall with my family and I can get out with them or I can stay and protect them, I'm going to do so. Now, if I'm in there by myself and something happens, am I going to just let innocent people be killed? If I've got a good opportunity, I may or may not take it. I mean, I'll cross that bridge when I get there. But some people are really focused on, oh, I'm going to be a hero. So if that guy comes in and he's stealing money from the gas station, can I just go ahead and help out? Can I shoot him? Well, you possibly could. I guess you can do whatever you want, but really, is money worth it? If he's not going to kill anyone, is money worth it? Okay, you hear every now and then you hear stories in other states about people who they just get their concealed carry permit. They see someone shoplift and they're running out the store, and this person has their concealed carry permit. They draw their firearm and shoot the guy. Really? The store's insured for stuff like that. It's not worth shooting someone over that. You need to shoot someone or use your firearm to shoot someone. You need to use your firearm to defend your life, okay? That's when it needs to be used. But you need to decide how you're going to use it. Do you want to go and be a hero and try to chase that person down in the mall? Because you can do that. That's no problem. But think real long and hard about your choice. There's a lot of other people around. You may get injured, you may get shot, you may get wounded, whatever it may be. Just think about it real hard now and make the choice. Why do you carry a firearm? Who are you protecting, or are you just trying to be a hero?
Yeah, I was talking to Sergeant Keith Thompson from Idaho State Police on air yesterday, and I was telling him before we got on air how I will go to Castle Corner sometimes if I need something small
Hmm.
over by the hospital.
Sure.
And the reason, and he pointed out, he said that's where a lot of us stop because deputies, troopers, and city police stop there because it's pretty close to Route 93 and all.
Right.
It's probably the safest. I don't have to worry about carrying there because those guys are in there a lot and they come in to grab something quickly. And if there's ever going to be any trouble, they'll handle it. We have a caller. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air on KLIX. Good morning. Hello? Three, two, one, gone. They can try again on the other side of the break.
Okay.
We've got a lot more to talk about, though.
Yeah, and this is is well, it kind of has something to do with self defense and using a firearm. But I had a little adventure this week, and I know the people I'm going to talk about here, they are in school right now, so they're probably not listening. But me, as it made me feel really good. I work out, I watch what I eat. I used to be 60, 70 pounds heavier than I am now. Pretty healthy, probably the healthiest I've ever been. And I'm over the young men's or the scout group that I go to church with. And these are these boys 16 years old, 17, 18 years old, whatever. And we decided to go on an activity Wednesday night. We decided to ride mountain bikes. Now, mind you, these boys they run track, they play soccer, baseball, basketball. I mean, this is over in Buell. I mean, these kids they're pretty athletic. They're in good shape. They're young. They should be. I had just gotten back from CrossFit. I'd ran a mile. Yeah, I'd done 100 wall balls, just a bunch of stuff. I was tired. I went home, took a shower, changed my clothes, picked these boys up for our activity. We were going to go ride mountain bikes. Okay. We didn't have much time. It was getting dark. So if everyone knows where Camp Roach is, we drove over to Camp Roach and we rode down to Camp Roach, down into the canyon there, and rode around. We got done and it was time to leave. And we got to the bottom of the hill and they all got off their bikes and they started walking and pushing their bikes up this hill, moaning and groaning the entire way. Me, I'm 40 years old. I mean, it's not real old, but I'm 40 years old. I rode past them, rode all the way up to the top, had my bike loaded before they got to the top. I was feeling pretty good about myself, but that translates over to self-defense. Stay in shape, do what you can, be able to fight off an attacker, keep up with your family, and you can protect yourself a lot easier that way.
We have more coming up with Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense. 20 minutes now away from 10 o'clock. It's 58. Bill Colley as well on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. We're talking firearms this morning and just firearm safety and training. Todd Eccles joins us from Patriot Defense on Friday mornings. Bill Colley with you too as well, answering the telephones at 736-0300. It's 56 right now. Telephone number again, 736-0300. We're at call it 9:44 now. And also we wanted to mention this weekend we could see some snow, but it's not going to be terrible. I mean, some flakes in the air on Sunday. Just a quick note, we'll get warmer weather by the middle of next week, back into the 70-degree range. Weather is brought to you by Mountain Home Auto Ranch in Mountain Home. We have a caller with us. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air with Todd Eccles.
Todd, how about guns used for protection from vicious animals with rabies?
Ooh.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you need to do that, yeah, you need to be very judicious of I mean, when you're talking about vicious animals, we talking about dogs, we're talking about wild animals. I mean, if you're out and about, you're out hunting or you're out hiking, well, yeah, you want to have something there to protect yourself from all kinds of stuff out there. I mean, it could be a coyote, it could be a raccoon. I mean, it is what it is. You obviously want to dispatch something like that. And if you see that, after you do that, don't touch it, but you may give Fish and Game a call and let them know what you've done. If you're in town and there's a dog and it's got rabies or it's just vicious period and it is attacking you and you think you're okay with shooting it, I mean, you need to protect yourself. Now, if you see a dog just running around, that doesn't mean you can just draw your firearm and shoot at it. You do you will get in trouble or get talked to about discharging your firearm in public, and you'll have some explaining to do. So you need to be really, really careful about that. I'm not encouraging people just shooting dogs. Maybe the best thing to do if no one is getting attacked in town and you just see one running around that might be a menace or might have rabies, is to keep an eye on it and call law enforcement. They'll get someone out there to take care of it.
I had a friend in high school and his family, they'd had the same farm in the family for about 140 years. And most of the people who farmed in the area were dairy farmers, a few beef cattle farmers, they raise beef. They were an anomaly. They had a lot of sheep, and then there was a pack of wild dogs that was living on the mountaintop.
Hmm.
And over the years, the dogs got more and more of them, and they came along one night and wiped out most of the herd of the sheep. And so my buddy Mark was walking through the woods a few days later when he encountered some of them, and he removed the threat, if you will.
And he was probably well within his right to do so at that point. I will say that that's another training tip. If you're out shooting, that's another good reason to work on your marksmanship skills, to work on your quick draw skills, even if you are out in the woods, because smaller animals, dogs, even a large dog or a medium sized dog or a coyote or whatever it may, those are really hard targets, and they move different than humans do. They're real dynamic in their movements, and it's a lot harder to maybe hit one of those with a round than what you think. And especially if you have an animal or a dog or something that's attacking somebody else, that's you're I mean, you don't know what's going to happen. You fire, someone moves wrong, you may hit the person being attacked instead of the animal. You just got to be very judicious and look at this very carefully.
That's been when I've heard about stories about pit bull attacks, or any dog attack, but is that oftentimes when a law enforcement gets there, they almost have to wait until that dog separates
Hmm.
from whoever it's attacking.
Yeah, you got to be very, very, very careful. So it's not as easy of a shot as someone else. As what you might think. You could pull the trigger, that dog could move, and then you hit someone, it could go through them. It is what it is. They're really dynamic and they move really fast.
And if a dog is running at you, we think about people
Yeah.
who are trained to lead birds when they're duck hunting. Or, if you're out hunting, you're trained to lead that shot. But an animal running at you, you don't really know the speed, and that animal is going to leap, and so you've got to have pretty steely nerves.
Well, yeah, and you got to know what you're doing, and so that leads you to maybe learning how to shoot at a moving target. And that doesn't mean you're going to be a pro at it, but you're going to be a lot better than if you hadn't trained on it.
And that's not a target going to the side; that's a target approaching.
Yeah, and it's approaching fast. So if you miss, where's that bullet going to go? Okay, is it going to go on the ground? Is it going to hit someone else? Is it going to go into a car, into a house? My kids shoot trap and skeet, and they're a lot better at it than me. And I like to take them duck hunting, and I go duck hunting. With a shotgun that sends out a nice pattern, I'll miss every duck I pull the trigger on. That's just because I'm horrible at duck hunting. I can only imagine doing that with one small little 124 grain bullet at something that's coming at me. I mean, I'm not even gonna get the spread out of it. I got one little bullet that needs to hit something that's running, and the chances of me missing are about 110%.
Now, depending on the animals, some coyotes are generally going to be running away from you.
You would
Uh,
think if they're rabid though, if they got rabies, they may be coming at you.
and then we've got the larger animals when it comes to moose, and even if you're over in East Idaho, the grizzly bear.
Yeah,
Uh,
stay out of their way.
Stay out because even this, depending on the size of your round,
Yeah.
you may not have a lot of impact even if you hit them.
Oh, well, exactly. The bigger the animal, a grizzly bear, something like that, you obviously want a good, heavy, heavy caliber. I mean, you're looking at 357, you're looking at 44, something like that. A 9 millimeter, there's a good chance it's not going to do it. It'll go into them, but maybe not penetrate the skull. That kind of thing. Then you got a wounded bear on your hand, which is worse than the original ticked off bear.
Reminds me of the movie Blazing Saddles when Mongo rides into town and he's riding an ox, and somebody says to the sheriff, "Mongo's back in town," and he starts putting his gun belt on, and the Cisco kid says, "No, don't shoot him; it'll just make him mad."
Yeah, exactly. Well, it does. I mean, 9 millimeter. We could talk about calibers. We got a few minutes here. Um, Caliber debate, the great caliber debate. I'll just lay it all out. I like 9 millimeter. It's the one I like. I don't want to carry a 380. Why carry a 380 when there's not much difference between that and a 9 millimeter? And a 9 millimeter cheaper to shoot. All the technology you have behind self defense rounds for 9 millimeter, it's good for the two-legged predators, that kind of thing, just fine. 40, don't like a 40. I love a 4. I can shoot them all. I like a 45. 45 is good, but I don't get to carry as many rounds. 40 is some weird mix between 9 millimeter and 45. Makes absolutely no sense to me. It's really snappy. You can't get back on target as quick. So my favorite is a 9 millimeter. That's the way I look at it. I don't like 40s. I've had a lot of people show up to class with 40s, and they think they can shoot them, and you know what? They can't. I don't know if it's because that's what law enforcement used to carry, or if it's just because it's got a 4 in the caliber. People think they can shoot it, and it's not always the best caliber to go with. I could probably get twice as many rounds into with my 9 millimeter into a target than you can with that 40, and I'm going to be probably more accurate.
We have a caller looking to join us. 10 minutes now away from 10 o'clock. And caller, you're up next on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com.
Good morning. I was just wondering why the U.S. military went with the SIG instead of the Beretta or an American company like Ruger.
I have no idea, but like anyone else, it's probably obviously maybe it fit their needs, and they probably got the best price. I mean, that's the way I look at it. I'm not in the military. I don't know if it would have been my choice. I've seen some bad things come through with that style handgun that they've chosen. I've seen some guns blown apart, that kind of thing. I've heard some not very good things about them, but we'll see. That I was going to probably get bad press too, but they used the Beretta for a long time.
Caller, if you're still with us, what's your take? I mean, do you have an opinion on why they did that?
Well, I haven't shot the SIG, but it looks like a lot of law enforcement and everything else is going back to the 9 millimeter. I mean, for some reason, it has a really high capacity to it,
Well,
But I sure would have liked to see an American company get that contract. I really would have.
yeah, we all would. And as far as caliber is concerned, 9 millimeter law enforcement and stuff like that, you see them all going back to nines, and they're doing that because as they've done that, and as the law enforcement officers and the people who have gone to qualify, they're getting better qualification scores with the 9 millimeter. They can get more rounds out there. They're more accurate. 40s are just snappy. There was a place for 40s when they came out with 40, but I don't think there's a place for 40 anymore. It's to me, it's pointless. 40s are pointless. I don't own one. I never will.
I want to thank him for the call. And police officers, some entire and big departments in big cities have all switched to Glocks, or they've been using them for a long time already. And it's simple. I mean, it's easy to use, and you hit your target.
Yeah, and a lot of them, a lot of them will have used or are using the Smith and Wesson M&Ps too, which are fantastic guns. I did pick up my 2.0 the other day. Fantastic gun. I love that 2.0. It feels really, really good. It's a shooter. It's great. It's way better than the first version of it. Trust me.
Military, of course, from about 1911, that's where the name comes from, right
Hmm.
up until 1985. Then they made the switch, and it was Beretta at the time, right,
Yeah.
for a number of years. Uh, but somebody somewhere in command must have said, let's do some tests and see what seems to work. You just wouldn't go out and do this without having seriously looked through everything.
That's what I'm thinking. Like I said, I'm not military. I'm not law enforcement. So I mean, I'm not quite sure how it works, but it makes sense. I was talking to there's a buddy of mine that I go hunting with. We take our kids hunting together a lot, and he's served quite a few tours and stuff. He's over in like Desert Storm and different things, but he told me, he said I don't know how true this is, but he could pick up those Berettas and shake them, and the slide would fall off if you got the right one. But he said over there they'd pick up these handguns and stuff that they'd find over there from the people, whatever, and they called them crappy handguns. They'd pick up the Glocks and stuff. I'm like, those are pretty nice. I don't know if I'd necessarily qualify them as a crappy handgun, but those I'm not super impressed with those Berettas, and I know some people who like them a lot, and they're okay. They shoot well. They're heavy, but they're way too heavy for a
I
carry gun.
suppose the military isn't using Springfield because of cost.
It could be. I mean, it could be. I mean, it's just like with any big government contract. What can you get, and how low can you go on the cost?
Because it's like saying we're going to, instead of drive Humvees, we're going to buy everybody a Mercedes Benz.
Right,
After a while, you go, okay, cost wise and use and
right,
all
yeah.
those things have to be factored in.
Oh, I'm sure it's all about big government contracts and availability, and what are you willing to come right out and make something exactly to fit their specs, that kind of thing. So,
My guess is that they weight a lot of factors, and you get an average of what works best. What's the best price point,
yep,
and how good is the quality
biggest
versus that price point?
biggest bang for the buck, just like anything.
Right. And we talked yesterday about highways on this show, and that's similar to what I heard from people. We want to point out again, 2 courses this month. Nothing set for May yet, right?
Not no. Give me. Usually I'll set up the May classes in between the two classes for the month previous. So give me about a week after this. Probably within about a week, I'll probably have the next classes set. I will like to add though that starting tomorrow, I'm hoping there's no more snow, no more drifting snow. We're actually using my classroom at my house, so I'm pretty stoked about that. It's pretty much finished. I opened it up the other day and realized I forgot to buy and install some base trim around the bottom, but that's not going to slow the class up any. So we get to use that, and I'm looking forward to that. And then we'll break for lunch, and then we'll meet over at the Buell Range and do the shooting
You think
portion.
somebody's going to actually come in and say, the base trim isn't finished here? I just don't know.
Well, I know it's not finished, and it should have been.
What's the number for people to call?
They can call or text me, area code 620-794-6223.
We have a caller with us. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air.
I don't have a hard time believing the military is buying SIGs because of price over a Ruger. Because if you go to buy one, there's twice to three times the price in the store. So it's got to be something more than that. I know ATF has shot 6 hours for years and years and years. But as far as calibers, I own a 40. I like it. I like to play with it. I don't carry one on a daily basis, but I like to collect guns. So I've got something in there, all sizes, just for giggles.
Sure. Why can I ask you, why don't you carry a 40?
Well, I don't carry the 40 because it's big, bulky, and the recoil is hard.
Okay.
But you answered that question, but I have one. If I want one that's really light and I can keep really on target, a 380 is the best.
And it's all to each his own. We know that, and I'm just giving you a hard time. But I would never go to the 380 because a 9mm is so much closer and just that much better in my mind.
I want to thank you for the call. And, of course, those original 1911s were all 45, right?
Yes.
And that contributed to maybe their demise.
And then you got those guys that want a 1911 and they get it chambered in a 9mm. But is it really a 1911 after they do that to it? I don't think so.
That's like somebody told me I wanted to buy an old car a few weeks ago, and I was talking to car enthusiast Grant Lobes, and I said I could always drop a modern engine into it. And he says, well, then you won't have a 55 Packard.
My thoughts when it comes to my Scouts, my Internationals, people say that all the time. We'll put that Chevy motor in there. Why did you tearing the heart out of the beast? Why do that?
Yeah. We want to thank Todd Eccles again. What's the just the contact information one more time?
Find me on Facebook under Patriot Defense. Like the page, shoot me a message, call or text me at area code 620-794-6223.
And I wanted to mention Rush Limbaugh's program is coming up next following Fox News at 10 o'clock. Sean Hannity after the news at 1 today. Glenn Beck after 4 o'clock news. Dave Ramsey from 7 until 10 o'clock tonight. God willing, the creek don't rise. They'll allow me to come back and do this all over again Monday morning between 8 and 10 o'clock.